Hello and welcome to Watchworthy. It's your co-host, Brother Ash.
And I'm Miss Chris D.
And on Watchworthy, we love to review documentaries and give y'all a little bit of that black perspective,
Yes.
how the people are feeling. You know what I'm
Especially
saying?
this one, child. Woo.
Yeah, this is some white people shit. It's like, no, I'm playing. It's really not. It's just like a crazy kind of story. And I feel like
But no, I feel like it is one of those stereotypical white woman true crime stories. Like, white women be getting away with some true crimes. I'm going to just say that.
Shout out to Sister Sue Kill. That
podcast.
Because
and that's the difference. We're talking about here a white woman who committed a murder versus if it was a black woman, she would have probably served a lot longer in jail. So we're going to get to it.
Yeah. So this documentary was interesting. The one we're going to be discussing today is called, we didn't even get a title, A Deadly American Marriage. So red flag.
Yeah, I mean, it's a red flag straight from the title.
Yeah, we knew that this was going to be one of them ones for sure.
Yeah, I heard y'all talking about it on social media, so I had to catch up and watch.
So this is about the murder of a guy named Jason Corbett. He was a husband, obviously a father. A lot of crying in this documentary. They had footage of the children of Jason. You'll learn more about them. Those kids been through a lot, so we got to see videos of them just kind of expressing their emotions throughout all of this.
It was so hard to watch.
Yeah, it was kind of tough to watch at certain points, but yeah. So the documentary features Molly Martins, Tom Martins. Molly Martins was the wife, the suspect, the perpetrator, I guess.
Yeah.
Tom Martins,
accomplice,
which was her dad. Spoiler alert, the perpetrators are out of jail, so they got away with that shit. And after you hear this story, we just want to know kind of like what you think about, how it went down. Was it a setup? Was it kind of like a heat of the moment thing? I think that shit was a setup.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with setup.
I'm big on a crime scene telling the story, and we'll get into it, but yeah, so remember, and when we want y'all to, let us know how you feel, you can, comment on our stuff on TikTok or YouTube, whatever.
Instagram. Yeah, we want to hear from you guys.
Yeah,
Send us a DM. After watching this and hearing this episode from Watchworthy, you're going to have a lot of opinions to share. So, as Brother Ash said, we're talking about Jason Corbett. He met his first wife, Margaret, they called her Mags, through their friend Lynn. So, it was a very, mutual, cool relationship from the beginning. They had a happy life in Ireland. They were from Ireland. Yeah, there's a lot of Irish people in this documentary, so they're talking like this, So Jason, that was my best Irish accent I could do.
That was good.
Jason and Mags had a happy life over there. They raised 2 kids, Jack and Sarah. So unfortunately, Mags died young, and Jack, their oldest son, was only 2. And I believe their youngest daughter, Sarah, she was 18 months. So they really didn't even get to know their mother.
Remember their real mom.
Yeah. And so suddenly Jason became a single father of 2 babies. No shade, but, the nurturing usually falls on the mother. So to grow up with your dad and no mom, that's got to be tough. And he was working all the time, they said. So he needed some help. He had to hire some help. So he hired Molly Martin. She's all the way from Tennessee, and he hired her as an au pair. I've heard of this before, babe. I know girls I'm from New Jersey, but I was a nanny in Italy for a month, and it was awesome. Some girls do it for the money. Some girls do it because they want a little sugar daddy situation. Some people literally just do it to travel. So that's not the problem here. The problem is, of course, he's a single dad. So there was about a 15-year age difference. She was 25 and he was 39.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Red flag.
And so, of course, she fell for a desperate, sad, lonely older man,
Yeah.
And so they fell in love. Again, I don't know their motives. Maybe they really did love each other at first. But Jason was a little chunky, and I just feel like Molly was this blonde supermodel type. So
I hear this.
I'm sorry, but I just feel like she was one of those people who was plotting from the beginning, I'm gonna go to Ireland, I'm gonna move myself right into this man's family.
I'm gonna tell it like it is, man. I always say I'm great at reading people, and she seemed like the type.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was her plan originally, but when she got whiff of how successful he was and how much he needed her to be there, I feel like she probably overcompensated in becoming a mother. You know what I'm saying?
She was doing a lot early on. She was oh, Sarah started calling me mommy at age 3.
Yeah,
you're the nanny. And if you want to draw those boundaries and draw that line in the sand, you'll be oh no, Sarah, I'm not your mommy.
And I'm sorry,
Molly.
That's a red flag, because these kids were so young that they could have completely forgot, especially the daughter.
Yeah.
a lot of the memories from their mom. And instead of you like trying to be there for them and help them through that, you kind of just insert yourself as their mom instead of allowing them to feel that loss.
Yeah.
Which to me is unsettling.
Right. I feel like that wasn't a nanny move. I feel like that was somebody who was trying to steal their daddy.
Yeah.
So they ended up getting married and they moved the family from Ireland to Meadowlands, North Carolina. Again, red flag, because I feel like Jason was Irish, like, down. Like, he loved Ireland, and I feel like he only moved the family for Molly. As I said, Molly was from Tennessee. So the fact that you moved to the south of the United States, that's your territory. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was kind of a red flag to me.
Big-ass house, too.
Yeah, it was
Big
a beautiful...
house, yeah.
You know those North Carolina, like, little like country kind of, you know, towns where everybody plays t-ball and swim club and all of that. That's the kind of lifestyle that they had. And so Molly at this point was just like a stepmom to the kids. She was at home while Jason worked. But that's the problem with bored housewives. Molly was one of those people who was just spreading rumors around the neighborhood for funsies. Red flag.
Super red flag.
I hate those kind of people who are like at book club like, oh, well, you know, I'm pregnant, but I actually had a miscarriage. And it's all a lie. Why are you lying about stuff like that? That's that cringe, like, weird. That's just weird. Just weirdos.
Scratch a lie, find a thief.
I was going to say, I remember in college, this one girl lied, told everybody she had cancer. She, like, pulled up an ultrasound from Google and was like, yeah, this is me. It was terrible. There's pathological liars out there.
You going to hell for that.
And Molly seemed like one of them, yes. And so she was just feeding off the attention. They said, like, she wasn't really credible then, and she still is not. I feel like we said, spoiler alert, she's not in jail. So when they were interviewing her, she just looked weird. Brother Ash said she looked like Angela from The Office. She looks
like Angela from The Office. Like, just that hair laid perfectly, posture just super, you know, very concise with her words. And that calm demeanor that almost yells, oh, that person's actually a serial killer.
We're talking about murder here.
Yeah, so...
She ain't shed one tear, actually, the whole documentary.
Yeah. Her energy was way off.
The crime that we're talking about, the night in question, it was August 2015. Molly and Jason had been together for around 7 years at that time. And to put it bluntly, Jason was bludgeoned to death, y'all.
Yeah.
Just red flag.
Those
crime scene photos, it was brutal.
It was to the point where one of the forensic analysts said they couldn't even tell how many times he was struck in the head because the marks from the weapons that they used had overlapped. So they couldn't even say, oh, he was struck 30 times.
Yeah, you can't even count at that point. They lost count. So, as you said, the murder weapons were a baseball bat, one of those aluminum baseball bats.
A Louisville Slugger.
And a fucking brick. Who has a brick on their nightstand? Let me break it down for y'all. In initial interviews, okay, so boom, he's bludgeoned to death. They called 911. First of all, the 911 call was way too calm. They were like, oh, my husband's bleeding. It wasn't like, oh my God, somebody help. Like, they were like, oh, I think he's dead. They were like faking doing CPR. They were like, 1, 2, 3. Like pretending they were doing CPR. The call was just way too calm. Red flag.
They were counting CPR like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's not how you do CPR at all.
The 911 call was just a red flag to me because you can just tell when somebody's truly in distress and when they're just like making it up. And also when the paramedics arrived, they said that Jason was cool to the touch. So that's a red flag because it's like, did you wait to call 911?
Yeah.
How long has he been dead? We don't even know.
Should be warm.
Yeah, so the murder weapons, going back to the murder weapons. Apparently, this is the story. In their initial interviews, Molly and her dad, Tom Martin, said that they were, first of all, your in-laws happened to be home the night that this happens, okay? So her dad and her mom were at the house. Apparently, they were staying in the basement. Apparently, Molly says that the daughter, Sarah, had a nightmare, and that pissed off the husband. Listen, kids do be pissing you off. Maybe this was the 5th night in a row and he was tired of it. And maybe they did get into altercation. We don't know. The only people who were there was the family who was in the house. But the way the kids tell it, like, oh, my sister had a nightmare. My parents started fighting about it. My mom let out a scream. And then next thing you know, my dad is bludgeoned to death. And so they're saying that Tom must have ran upstairs. He heard his daughter scream. And, oh, this is the last time you're going to put your hands on my daughter, and started whacking him with a baseball bat. So basically they're trying to paint this as self-defense of domestic abuse. red flag, because I am still on the fence if that really happened. I don't really believe domestic violence occurred in this household. No. If it did, that's still not a reason to me to bludgeon somebody to death.
Yeah.
And like you said, going back to Sisters Who Kill, I listened to that podcast, and sometimes it is women who were like, oh, I had to stab this dude because it was me or him.
And it's like,
I get that, but not 50,011 times.
If it's a crime of passion, like, you'll see shit that will show you that with the autopsy. But if they call the cops and the, cops get there and, this guy is knocked out, that's one thing. They beat the shit out of this man.
They literally beat him
to the point
death.
where he could not have been fighting back after a certain point, and then they continue to, hurt him. So
what did it for me was the dent in the wall where you could see like his head was up against the wall, and they kept smacking him.
What did it for me was the piece of his fucking skull that was missing. Like, how?
They said a chunk of his brain fell out on the autopsy table.
You can't. No.
And so the brick. I don't know who hit Jason first, Molly or her father, but they had two weapons. They claimed that it was a face-to-face duel, it was a face-to-face battle. So Molly had a brick because apparently she was going to redo the flower bed that day with the kids and paint some rocks, and it rained, so she brought them into the house. You brought them all the way into your bedroom and you had a brick on your nightstand? Yeah, that's a red flag to me. I'm not buying that.
Who the fuck brings something from the garden to the bedroom?
Like, I have art supplies in my house, in my room maybe, but not a brick just laying around. So I feel like that was plotted as well. She was just waiting to use that.
Now I know if it's ever a brick on your desk. I need to keep my head on a swivel.
So at this point, Jason is dead. Now it's just his two kids left with Molly, who they see as a mother, but she also killed your dad. But they do have family from Ireland. So Tracy, Jason's sister, as soon as she got the word, she and her husband, David, they were actually named the guardians of the children in Jason's will, thank God. And they were like, oh, we're on our way from Ireland right now, as soon as we can. But of course, as soon as they got there, within 48 hours of Jason's death, the Martin family, that's Molly and her father and her mother, Sharon, they were filing for custody of Jack and Sarah.
Fuck y'all.
And I just feel like red flag because, like, if you guys were married, if you were technically their stepmom, what's the rush to finalize the adoption right now? The man just died. Like, we can figure all that out later. Can we figure out the funeral arrangements first?
She had been wanting to file for adoption for a while.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
that's what really makes it sketchy.
Yeah. Jack, like, was never cool with that, though. Like, he never wanted,
Jason.
My fault, Jason. Jason, he felt like she wanted to take his kids away from him. He had that gut feeling. And this is why this is why I feel like she forced herself in this man's life. Like,
yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, like, what was the motive if it wasn't domestic abuse? Like you said, adoption, again, not a great reason to kill somebody, but we'll get into that later. So Tracy and David, they're like, nah, this is my niece and nephew, and they're coming back to Ireland with us. Technically, those kids were born in Ireland. They're Irish citizens. So we got more family over there, plus their birth mother's family that they could be around, because now they've lost both of their biological parents.
Molly was
in both brutal ways. Yeah, Molly was... At this point, she was technically his wife, but we know that it wasn't a happy marriage. So, the Martin family, they also were not allowing Tracy, Jason's sister, to see his body. Red flag. I don't care who the fuck. Yeah. That's why you have to be careful who you marry. You really have to be careful who you marry, because they're going to get all of the legal rights to your body and your will and everything. And I just hate that for the family. So ultimately, the autopsy found that Jason had lesions on his head, face, shoulder blades, and like you said, so many blows they couldn't even count them. And so Jack was only 10 at the time of this crime. Their son was only 10 years old. And they took him into the little kid interview room where they had blocks and coloring and things. And so you're watching this interview video, and it's so sad. The kids are pretty collected, actually.
Yeah.
A little too collected.
Yeah.
And so Jack was like, yeah, my dad would physically and verbally abuse Molly. So, I understand she killed my dad. They were like, so what happened? He was like, yeah, my sister had a nightmare. They said, who told you that? Molly told me. And then same with Sarah. Sarah was only 8 at the time. And in her interview, she was like, yeah, I saw my dad hit my mom before. So the kids were putting a red flag because we believe they could have been coached.
Yeah.
And it's really obvious when a little kid is being interviewed and they're like, well, my mom told me, well, Molly told me, well, she said, you're just repeating what Molly told you. And she's the prime suspect at this point. So you're going to say whatever she told you. And like I said, they really think of her as a mother figure at this time. So if your mom tells you, like, you better say this in the interview room, you're going to say it. So that was really sad to see, like, those kids just in the middle, just being manipulated. And so Tom, of course, in his police interview, her dad, 65-year-old white guy, I said to Brother Ash, I was like, I feel like the nom must have came out of him. And then they did say he was a veteran. I was like, I called it. Because the way he beat that man's head with that bat, if you saw that crime scene, it was like something just, a switch went off in that old man. And he just kept beating and beating and beating. And that's gruesome. That's the real villain. But he wanted to paint Jason as the villain. Oh, well, I know that this guy was an MMA fighter. He had a background in boxing. So I was scared for my life.
Red flag. And this is no disrespect to the deceased, but Jason wasn't no boxer. I'm not saying he couldn't fight or he couldn't defend himself, but he wasn't fit. He wasn't. And it wasn't no reason to be scared for your life. You'll run across some dudes that box that are out of shape, and I'm not saying he couldn't have been taking. But apparently he wasn't taking boxing classes. He wasn't in no martial arts
classes. Right, his family
was
like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Tracy was like, he never did boxing. Like,
they just made that shit up. Like,
so Tracy was really upset because she said they were doing everything they could to destroy Jason's character. I really hate that. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, we don't know what happened. But even maybe he did have too much to drink that night and he did hit her or something. But again, that doesn't deserve like murder.
And I get where the dad is coming from because he was like, yeah, that's my daughter. Like, so like if I have a sister, I don't have a daughter, but if I had like, a situation where my sister or my niece or was being abused, then I would step in. But I would probably beat
the shit out of them too, but not to murder.
Yeah, I can't say it would be a piece of his brain on the floor afterwards. Yeah. Like,
so Jason's family in Ireland is just really upset about this. They say that he was the most kind-hearted person. He was everybody's friend. He was very charismatic. One of those nice guys. Sometimes abusers, they could look like that on the outside and deep down they could hit women. I don't know, again, but I don't get that vibe from this guy. And his kids even backed it up and they were like, okay, no, he didn't hit her. So we'll get to that part too. But again, what was the motive? Like Brother Ash said, before Jason's murder, Molly was pushing to adopt Jason's kids. And it was like, okay, we got the house, we got the marriage, like now it's time for me to be their official mommy. And Jason was just like, what's the rush? It's a piece of paper. When somebody says that, they don't want to do that. If somebody's dragging their feet and putting it off, they probably don't want to do it. And I think that was a smart decision. Honestly, that was the smartest thing that man could have ever done. Thank God he didn't make her their legal guardian. Something in him just told him. Because they were not the picture-perfect marriage. There's email evidence, thank God for the 2010s. There's email evidence that he was kind of trying to break it off. The emails look desperate. This is why I said that it seemed like a sugar baby situation. Because in the emails, Jason was like, why is nothing I do ever good enough for you? I'm trying. I even take you on vacation. Like, I don't know what else to do to make you happy. And she was like, the only thing that's going to make me happy is adopting your kids. Adoption. Like, what? Red flag.
Yeah. Red flag. I'm going to be honest, yo. I feel like this story we need to undig this more.
I feel like she was one of those people who wanted to be a mother so badly or something. I
don't know why, though, because I wonder what else was going on where she wanted custody of the kids. Because y'all know how it goes in the courts. Once a couple gets divorced, it's always going to go in favor to the mother.
Yeah.
So I am just concerned because her family was in on it as well.
Yeah, can we talk about the fact that the parents were there? All of a sudden, on this day, your parents happen to be in town from Tennessee. The mother put a red flag for Sharon. Sharon Martin, in her police interview, claimed, oh, I heard a little ruckus upstairs, but I was sleeping downstairs.
A little ruckus.
So I just went back to sleep.
Yo, this crime scene looks like somebody dipped a paintbrush in some red paint and just...
It was a bloodbath.
Played Ring Around the Rosie with that bitch in the whole house. It was bad.
Even if I heard somebody scream, I would have came upstairs to check what's going on up here.
Talking about some ruckus.
She said I just rolled back over and went to sleep. So I feel like you're in on it too. And like I said, some of the evidence, the brick just happened to be laid out on the nightstand because we were redoing the garden. Just come on now. It just seems like it was a setup to me. But on the other hand, what if you really took it at face value and you was like, okay, domestic violence gone wrong. They were in fear for their life. They killed this man. Now these kids are still without real parents, and now they're caught in between. So it was just a lose-lose for everybody. I don't really see how she could have. Was it the insurance money? I'm just trying to figure out what was the real motive. Like,
I don't know.
We'll never know.
It might have been some other type of corrupt shit going on.
Yeah.
Or that she wanted to go on, but knew that she needed to get them out of his care to do it. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't want to make assumptions, but it's weird, like, for her to be pressing for that so much.
Very weird. So, like I said, there's email evidence that Jason was not happy either. After Jason's death, Molly was pushing for full custody now. It's no longer adoption. It's, these are my kids now because he's gone. But the judge ruled for Jack and Sarah. I was surprised by this. I was happy by this. The judge ruled for them to go back to Ireland. He was like, nah, you're going back home with your mother and with your auntie and your uncle. And at least you'll have your mother's family there, Like I said, these kids were 10, 8 years old. So this was like adolescence. This was a hard time to move. I moved from Indiana to New Jersey when I was 10, and that was a culture shock. So I can't imagine going to Ireland. Like, they had these little Irish accents, y'all. Oh my God. My heart was breaking. And they're still believing, like, okay, I guess Molly did this to save us because our dad was abusive. That's what they're still believing in their head. So they were, like, really sad. It was a very emotional day when the cops came to take the kids from Molly. Because, as I said, this was the only mother they had ever